All right, get ready to dive deep because today we're tackling Atlantis. And yeah, I know what you're thinking. Sunken city, lost civilization, the whole shebang.
It's a classic.
It really is. But we're here to go beyond the usual cliches. We're talking about why this story, even if it's more legend than history, still has this powerful grip on us.
Right. It's incredible how much this one story has permeated our culture.
Totally. And get this, our main source. Plato, the philosophy rock star himself, talk about going deep.
We're talking about his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias specifically. Written around 360 BC, those are pretty much the only first-hand accounts we have.
So everything we think we know about Atlantis
Stems from these texts. It's
Ugh.
wild.
It's like Plato tossed this pebble into history, and we're still feeling the ripples. But here's the catch. Most scholars agree that Plato's Atlantis is more like a thought experiment than a historical record.
It's an allegory, a story with a deeper meaning.
Exactly. So no maps to Atlantis anytime soon, huh?
Probably not. But you have to remember, Plato was all about using stories to explore complex ideas. And Atlantis, even if it never physically existed, it forces us to grapple with some massive questions. We're talking power, ambition, the whole shebang. And the big one. Can any civilization, no matter how mighty, really stand the test of time?
Okay, I am so ready to unpack this. So what exactly does Plato tell us about this legendary Atlantis? Paint us a picture.
Okay, so picture this Atlantis, this massive island, way bigger than Libya and Asia Minor combined. And it's located beyond the Pillars of Hercules.
Beyond the Pillars of Hercules, that sounds ominous.
Right. Even figuring out where those pillars were is debated, which just adds to the mystery. But anyway, Plato describes Atlantis as this incredible naval superpower ruled by kings who'd conquered huge parts of Europe and North Africa.
We're talking ambition on a grand scale, but something tells me this isn't going to end well for them.
You're catching on. So here's where things take a turn. Atlantis, totally drunk on its own power, decides to conquer Athens. Now remember, for Plato, Athens represented his ideal state, the epitome of reason, virtue, all that good stuff.
So attacking Athens, that's like a major no-no in Plato's book.
Huge no-no, like slapping the universe in the face.
And we all know the universe doesn't like that, especially in Greek mythology.
Not one bit. This arrogance, it brings the wrath of the gods down on Atlantis, and boom, in a single day and night, the entire civilization is swallowed by the waves. Total annihilation.
Gone, just like that.
Gone. Wiped off the map. It's heavy stuff. But even with this dramatic ending, it's clear that Plato isn't just spinning a disaster story here. There's a message, right? He's using Atlantis to make a point.
All right, so it's like a warning from the past disguised as this epic tale.
Exactly. Remember, it's an allegory. Athens represents balance, wisdom, everything Plato valued. Atlantis, on the other hand, becomes this cautionary tale. It shows what happens when power grows unchecked, when ambition runs wild without any moral compass. It leads to ruin. Total ruin.
So, even if Atlantis is fictional, it's this stark reminder from history, or at least from Plato's version of history, makes you think, are there any modern-day Atlantises out there? Empires built on shaky ground.
That's the question, isn't it? And the fact that we're still asking these questions thousands of years after Plato wrote them just shows how powerful this story really is.
It really makes you wonder, did any real events inspire Plato to create this whole Atlantis saga?
It's possible. Scholars have a few theories about that.
Okay, hit me with them. What are we thinking?
Well, one idea is the Athenian invasion of Sicily back in 415 BC. It was a disaster for Athens, totally backfired and weakened them significantly. You can see how that kind of defeat, this once great power brought low by its own ambition, might have influenced Plato.
Wow, it's almost like history echoing through myth. Were there any other historical events that might have played a role?
A couple more come to mind. There's the destruction of Helike in 373 BC.
What happened there?
It was a Greek city wiped out by an earthquake and tsunami. Gone, just like that.
That's terrifying.
Right. And that image, a whole civilization swallowed by the sea, it's powerful stuff, hard to shake. And then there's the Thera eruption.
Thera, is that the same as Santorini?
The one of the same, also known as the Santorini eruption. It happened sometime around 1600 BC, and let me tell you, this was a volcanic event of epic proportions. Seriously, imagine the kind of impact that must have had. It's easy to see how a cataclysm like that could give rise to legends of lost civilizations, right?
It's like these stories, these myths, they're how we process disasters, how we remember the past, and maybe even learn from it. But what about the people who took Plato's Atlantis literally? Weren't there ancient thinkers who actually believed it was a real place? So even if Atlantis was a figment of Plato's imagination, it hasn't stopped people from searching for it, like for centuries.
It really hasn't.
It's like we can't resist the allure of this sunken city, even when, logic tells us it's probably a myth.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how this one story has been reshaped and reinterpreted throughout history. It's like a mirror, reflecting the beliefs and anxieties of different cultures across time.
Right. And it's so interesting to see how the Atlantis story has evolved. I mean, in Plato's time, it was all about the dangers of unchecked ambition. But later on, things change. It becomes something different.
Totally. Take the Renaissance, for example. We start to see Atlantis linked with utopian ideals. Instead of a warning, it becomes a symbol of a lost paradise.
A perfect society hidden away from all the bad stuff.
Exactly.
And this was during the age of exploration, right? When Europeans are encountering the Americas for the first time. Makes you wonder if those real-world discoveries had any impact on, how people thought about the Atlantis myth.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine that.
Right.
Encountering a whole new continent with cultures and ruins you don't understand. It's easy to see how the idea of Atlantis, this lost, technologically advanced civilization, might get projected onto the Americas.
So they were looking at the new world through Atlantis-colored glasses.
Kind of, yeah.
Didn't some people even try to connect Atlantis with the Maya civilization?
Ah, yeah, definitely. In the 19th century, you had figures like Augustus Le Plongeon.
Le Plongeon, he was one of the first to excavate Mayan ruins, right?
That's the one. And he was convinced he'd found proof, actual evidence, linking the Maya to ancient Egypt.
And from Egypt to Atlantis.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a bit of a stretch, don't you think?
Yeah, about that. Le Plongeon's theories relied on some, let's say, creative interpretations of Mayan writing and symbols.
Creative? How?
Well, interpretations that haven't really held up over time.
Ah, so not quite the smoking gun he thought it was.
Not quite.
Still, it's kind of amazing, isn't it? This need to connect Atlantis to the puzzle of human history, like we're searching for this missing link.
Right. It's that human desire for a unifying narrative. This lost chapter in our collective past that explains everything. And this desire, this need, it fueled some of the more imaginative theories about Atlantis.
You're talking about Ignatius Donnelly, his book Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, that was like the 19th century equivalent of a summer blockbuster.
Ew, totally. And Donnelly.
Yeah.
He'd take things to a whole new level.
Yeah.
Forget connecting Atlantis to Egypt or the Maya. Donnelly believed Atlantis was the source of all human civilization.
Wait, seriously, he thought Atlantis was like what, the Garden of Eden with Wi-Fi?
Basically, technologically advanced, the origin point for all knowledge and culture. That was Donnelly's grand theory.
Wow. And as wild as it seems now, his book was a huge hit. People ate it up.
They did.
Why do you think that was?
It's that classic what if, right?
Yeah.
What if there really was this incredibly advanced civilization that vanished? What secrets did they hold? It's that sense of wonder, but also maybe a bit of fear. Like, are our own civilizations as permanent as we like to think?
That's a bit unsettling when you really think about it.
Right. And Donnelly's book, it might have been light on actual evidence,
Okay, you're being generous.
but it had this massive impact. It sparked countless other books, expeditions, and, well, some less grounded theories, too.
He really got people fired up about Atlantis. It's undeniable. And then the Atlantis narrative takes another interesting turn with Helena Blavatsky and Theosophy.
Ah, Blavatsky. This is where Atlantis gets a more spiritual, esoteric dimension.
Less about physically finding the lost city and more about, like, its spiritual significance.
Exactly. For Blavatsky, writing in the late 19th century, Atlantis wasn't just a sunken continent. It represented a stage in human evolution.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, Blavatsky believed the Atlanteans had this advanced spiritual knowledge, these powers, but they misused them and ultimately caused their own destruction.
So we've gone from philosophical allegory to lost technology to spiritual evolution. Is there anything Atlantis hasn't been connected to?
Not much. It's pretty remarkable, and it gets even more interesting with Edgar Cayce in the early 20th century.
Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. I remember reading about him. He was big into past lives, reincarnation, all that. Where does Atlantis fit into this?
So Cayce claimed he accessed info about Atlantis through these psychic readings he'd do.
Hold on, psychic readings.
Yeah, and according to his readings, Atlantis was this super advanced society with technology and a complex social structure, and, you guessed it, its destruction was a warning about the dangers of abusing power.
Okay, so we've gone from ancient Greece to, what, crystals and psychic powers now? This is quite a range.
Well, he did talk about ancient technologies and psychic abilities, But remember, Case was working with a very different framework than, say, Plato or Donnelly. He was
Hmm.
drawing from theosophy, spiritualism, and his own unique brand of mysticism.
It's like everyone who encounters the Atlantis story projects their own beliefs and fascinations onto it. It becomes this blank canvas.
That's a great way to put it. In
Mhm.
Case, he definitely tapped into something, right? I mean,
Yeah.
his readings are still popular.
Yeah, they are. But I gotta say, it's important to take these claims with a grain of salt.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh,
Always. As fascinating as Casey's Atlantis is, there's no real evidence to back it up.
We can't just take his word for it, unfortunately.
Right. But it does show how this myth, how this one story, can be molded to fit all sorts of worldviews.
It's amazing how adaptable it is. Atlantis just keeps popping up throughout history. Books, movies, video games, you name it. It's become the ultimate symbol for any mysterious, vanished civilization.
It has. And while the search for a literal, physical Atlantis might be, a fool's errand, the stories we tell about it, those are super revealing.
Oh, so?
Well, they reveal something essential about us. Our obsession with the past, our need to find meaning in the unknown, and maybe even a touch of anxiety about the fate of our own societies.
It's a lot to unpack. We've covered so much ground today, from ancient philosophy to psychic readings.
And it all comes back to this one enduring legend.
It's pretty mind-blowing. But we're not quite finished yet, are we? I'm curious. How can we approach the Atlantis story today? In a way that acknowledges its power, but without, getting lost in the weeds of pseudoscience and wild theories. We've covered some pretty wild interpretations of Atlantis over the course of this deep dive,
We really have.
and some more grounded than others, I guess you could say.
Definitely.
But if we're being honest, the chances of actually finding this, legendary sunken city are, well, I'm not planning my scuba trip just yet.
Yeah, probably a good call.
So if we're being realistic,
Yeah.
Atlantis, as Plato described it, probably doesn't exist.
Most likely not. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Even if we never dig up Atlantis, even if it's all a myth, just trying to understand why this story is so powerful, why it won't die, that can teach us a lot about ourselves.
I like that. It's like the search for Atlantis, the journey might be more important than actually finding it.
Exactly. Think about all those theories about where it's located.
Oh, don't get me started. We could do a whole other deep dive on that.
Seriously. But those theories, they often say more about the people who came up with them than they do about actual historical evidence, don't you think?
Okay, you're right. You're right. So tell me, what's the most out there location for Atlantis you've come across in your research?
Oh, man. That's a tough one.
Uh,
There's so many to choose from. We've got Atlantis in Antarctica.
Antarctica, come
I'm
on.
telling you, Atlantis in the Caribbean, Atlantis off the coast of India, even a theory linking it to Doggerland.
Duggar, what?
Doggerland. It was this landmass that's now submerged under the North Sea.
Huh, I've never even heard of that. See, this is what I love about the whole Atlantis thing. It's this blend of history, geography, mythology. You can get lost in it. But okay, let's say we, accept that we might never find Atlantis on a map. What can we still learn from this story?
Well, for one thing, it shows just how deeply fascinated we are by the unknown.
Right.
As humans, we're driven to explore, uncover secrets. And the idea of this lost civilization with advanced knowledge and technology, it totally taps into that curiosity.
Indiana Jones instinct.
Exactly. Always searching for the lost artifact, the hidden knowledge. It's like Atlantis is the ultimate prize.
The holy grail of lost civilizations.
Right. But it goes deeper than that, I think. The Atlantis story also speaks to a certain anxiety we have about our own place in the world. I mean, if a civilization as advanced as the one Plato describes could vanish so quickly, it makes you think about the fragility of our own societies.
That's a humbling thought for sure.
Right.
Makes you wonder if, thousands of years from now, there will be stories about lost cities called New York or London.
Who knows? Maybe. And maybe those future civilizations will be wrestling with the same questions about us. What were they like? What happened to them? What can we learn?
It puts things in perspective, doesn't it?
It really does.
So we might never unearth the actual ruins of Atlantis.
Probably not.
But that doesn't mean we should stop exploring the story and thinking about what it means.
Absolutely not. I think that's what makes it so intriguing.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
Exactly. The search for meaning, for understanding, that's just as important, if not more important, than finding some physical location.
It's about what Atlantis represents. The rise and fall of civilizations, the dangers of pride and arrogance, our endless fascination with the past. These themes, they'll always resonate, even if the city itself remains a mystery.
I couldn't agree more. Maybe that's the ultimate lesson of Atlantis. It's not about finding it on a map, but finding its place in our understanding of history, culture, humanity.
I love that. I think that's the perfect place to wrap up our deep dive into the legend of Atlantis. We've gone from ancient philosophy to historical disasters to even a little bit of mysticism, all thanks to this one enduring tale. What a journey it's
It
been.
really has. It was a pleasure diving deep with you.
The pleasure was all mine. And to all our listeners out there, never stop asking the big questions, okay? Keep exploring, keep searching. Who knows, you might just discover your own Atlantis along the way.